Hello, and welcome to Emerging, a podcast where I talk to both new and emerging artists about their experiences navigating the art world. My name is Arnold Barretto. I am a photographer, graphic designer, and printmaker, and I will be your host. Before we get into this episode, I just wanted to point out that we are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, so you can watch this episode however you would like. So today I am joined by Arvin Tsai, who is a visual communicator and graphic designer based in the UK at the moment.
Hi,
Hi.
how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Can you introduce yourself? Just how would you describe you?
Hi, I'm Arvin. A quick rundown. I am Taiwanese, born and raised in Thailand, not the same places, and I am a visual person. I don't, I was formally trained as a visual artist, so painting. But I am now segueing into visual communications, but I don't want to say that I'm a full-fledged graphic designer just because it's like a whole discipline that is not just typing out letters, posting squares and posting it, it's a whole, more or less the scientific side of art, I suppose, like if you're comparing fine art to graphic design. And so I kind of don't, I feel like shameful almost calling myself a graphic designer when I haven't, when I'm not at that level yet. So I just say I'm a visual person.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm honestly, I've seen your work and I would call you a graphic designer because I graphic design is such a broad subject and such a broad profession that like you could fall into any specific category as long as you're doing it. I feel, and this is something that I've been told by like professors and stuff, like you're doing some of the work. Like if you've taken one class of photography, you're a photographer. You can call yourself a photographer.
Okay, I mean, I feel like, people use this example a lot. Just because you cook once or twice, or like you cook regularly for breakfast, like whatever, doesn't make you a chef. I think like, okay, I sound hella girl boss gatekeep right now, but like the noun itself, I do think it's more or less reserved for like people who actually do it as a profession. Like, yes, anyone can do art, anyone can use it as a hobby, like it's whatever, and there's no way to say that like this is bad or this is good, because I think some aspects of it are very subjective, obviously. Of course you can go through like the objective art criticism, which I agree on, but at the end of the day, like I think there's still a difference. Just calling everyone a chef or calling everyone an artist is kind of dilutes the essence of it.
Yeah, for sure.
But
Did I cut you off? I'm sorry.
no, don't worry. But my point is, I think it's relative, right? Because I have such high expectations for myself, and mediocrity is not an option. I hate it, which is why I'm depressed, because I feel like I've set my standards up so high that I'm not meeting it. And so it's just like this vicious cycle. Anyway, that's why I don't like to call myself a graphic designer, because I don't feel like I am one yet. But we're moving on.
That's a good point, because I feel like that's okay. So I know I said the thing about like, I consider myself a photographer and stuff, but whenever I'm asked about like, oh, do you do photography as a profession, especially right now, it's like I always feel the need to say no, because I don't make enough money off of it. And I used to make, I was on the way of making enough money off of it before, but now it's like that I'm in Dubai, and Dubai has like really weird laws about just selling, trading, doing anything related to arts that you end up selling and stuff. Like in the US, it's like, oh, you can, as long as you know, um, put it on your taxes or whatever. Like there's specific ways of doing it. Whereas in the UAE, you have to have like a trade license. You have to get
Hmm.
like a bunch of like a freelance, like you'd have to get a freelance license and a trade license to do it, and that's like
Yeah.
shit ton of money. So
I mean, I think it's okay, so saying calling what I was saying about making it a profession is a bit reductive, but
mhm,
I guess what I was saying is because at least you have a sustained practice of taking photographs.
right,
So I think like that constitutes as being a photographer, regardless of whether or not you're earning money from it or not.
right.
What I was saying was like, I guess like taking one or two photographs and like to call yourself a photographer if you only take a few, or like, you know what I mean?
I do,
Yeah.
but also going back to your own like talking about you, I mean like if your social media has any like indication of it, like you seem like you're doing a lot of visual communication, a lot of graphic design in it. So I think you could cut
Hmm.
yourself a slack and call yourself a graphic designer.
Thank you.
Yeah. Also, like it's very common for people like us who are very critical of our own work to end up missing a lot of opportunities because we feel like we're not there yet. And there's a lot of people
Mhm.
who are like a lot less stronger and they're working a lot less smarter and they're
Yeah.
maybe not smarter, but you know what I mean, like who really fake it till they make it,
Yeah.
which pushes a lot of people who like us who are very critical and very uh how
Yeah.
what is the word for it, self-sabotage.
It's
I have
like
to bring RuPaul into it.
mental illness, being Asian,
Yeah,
being a Virgo, and
yeah,
being an artist inherently is like they're just each of them are terrible in it of itself, but like a concoction of it
yeah.
just is catastrophe.
You're a
Cause
Virgo.
like, yeah, I
I
am.
have to end this call. I don't speak to Virgo man.
Fuck off. We make the world go round, okay? Beyonce is a
Yeah,
Virgo.
not
Hello.
in a good way.
Yeah, whatever. So when I look at the work that I'm doing, it's almost like the jack of all trades, but master of none.
Hmm.
And I mean, I know that the full idiom or saying is actually more than that, but for me, it's not good enough.
Yeah,
But okay, thank you, because I guess I am a visual communicator. It's just I'm still at this amoeba phase of my career or of my skill set that it just has been coming to grips with it, especially because I was formerly trained as a fine artist. So
hmm,
with painting, I've garnered enough self-confidence with that craft, but I'm relatively new to design. So I'm still finding my footing in terms of how I conduct myself as a designer and how I feel about my work in design. Because I mean, I sent you my website yesterday. My fine art and my design are very different.
hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah,
I'm still kind of baby tiptoeing around that. Plus, I'm working like on three different projects right now because I'm not in art school
yeah.
currently. So I'm taking this summer to basically condense a whole BFA degree into one summer. And I'm teaching myself like typography, which is why I'm designing my own typeface.
Hmm.
Um, I am learning Chinese calligraphy, which will be applied to my typeface. I'm doing 3D modeling on uh, Cinema 4D of my painting, and I'm learning to code.
That's a lot of things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes.
So so you mentioned calligraphy. How did that come into your work? Because that's very prominent in a lot of things you do,
Um,
at least as
I
far as I've seen.
actually, yeah, no, no, it is, it is. It actually does inform a lot of my practice. Well, calligraphy in and of itself, I don't think I ever found like a real gravity towards it. It was a very nice object to look at. And it happens to be a part of my culture. But the beginnings of this was, I think, I just wanted to create one day at home. This was like literally 7 some odd years ago. And I took the materials that I had and just did like a Jackson Pollock-esque painting on like shitty brown paper. And it turned out that I was like, oh, this is kind of Jackson Pollock meets Chinese guohua, or like Chinese calligraphy, which is like, guohua is basically those mountain ink paintings that you see associated with Chinese art.
Mhm.
And that, in tandem with what I was doing for high school art at the time, I was like, white people are gonna eat this shit up, because I don't know. I was an IB student, so I was taking IB art, and essentially I was like, what can I do so that I basically culturally appropriated my own culture. That's what happened. Because I was like, if I do this, and I was like, as a Taiwanese person, I wanted to explore like my westernization meets like my own culture and stuff like that. Like, people will eat that shit up. And the thing is, I didn't do it without passion, because obviously I did found like it was like a aha moment for me as well, but it just was a perfect thing, which I did end up getting a good grade for that course. And it just further, when I went to art school for like that 1 year, calligraphy and the strokes are really powerful in the sense, because it's stark black strokes. And I just use that on raw canvas, which is traditionally associated with Western art, but I don't stretch it. So it's supposed to look like a scroll painting. So it's kind of subverting the conventions of how Western paintings are, and also subverting Chinese art.
And that makes a lot of sense. So you're still doing school, or you're not in school, or
I'm about to enter, after the summer, I'm about to enter my final year of school, because
okay.
a bitch kept dropping out. So yeah, I'm in business school right now, unfortunately. I just did it because I needed to get a degree. And so yeah, I'm finally about to get a degree. Fingers crossed, knock on wood.
Why
And after
business?
that, I want to go to graduate school in graphic design, so that I could
Okay.
probably get a degree from it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so why business?
Well,
You just
I
picked out a hat.
so after high school, I went to University of Toronto, and
Yeah.
I was gonna do pre-med, pre-law, because North American universities, you don't pick your major, right? So my freshman year, I was literally taking anything that I thought that I would be interested in taking: neuroscience, psychology, all the like sociology, all ologies, and I dropped out after a year. I went to art school. Even my mom was like, I told you so, which was great, because I was
Yeah.
doing drawing and painting and I loved it. But I had gone through so much at that point in my life, and I just burnt out. So I decided to take a gap year. And after my gap year, I was debating on whether or not I should go back to art school or do something else. And as much as I love art, I need to take a step back from it, because I was still vaguely mentally fragile, I suppose. Because as much as I love art, because it's so personal to me, And I'm so passionate about it that it's emotionally draining, it's physically draining, and it's financially draining, because obviously you need to get your supplies and you need to invest in whatever, what have you. And in a sense, I was like, I'm not ready to go back and do that, or I'm not even ready to do that at all. And the only other thing that I haven't tried was business. And I figured, because it had, I would just specialize in marketing, and hence that's why I went to business school.
So when you were going to art school, did you feel like you were getting enough resources from there for like where you are right now, for like moving past the art school stuff?
Uh, it's, you mean resources in terms of me becoming an artist?
Outside, not, what I mean is not internally. Like, did you feel like you were getting enough knowledge of where, like, that would have helped you where you are right now?
Oh, as a painter, yeah, because
Yeah.
I was really lucky. You know how some people, when they sign up for classes, they look through like rate my professors, and they they carefully curate their schedule so that
Mhm.
every professor is their like highly ranked or whatever. I genuinely was just free, like whatever. um, and I felt really honored to be taught by this professor called Veronica Sukud Larek. Excuse me if I butchered her name, but she's literally like a boss lady, and I love her so much. In that 1 year that I was there as her student, I grew so much as a painter, because I remember the first time we were covering color theory, and she was sitting there demonstrating acrylic
Mhm.
mixing palettes. I was just so mesmerized by how smooth she was mixing the colors and her palette and the wrist movements, that I was like, it was an orgasmic experience, truly. And for the rest of the year, yeah, she's not only great in class, but I would go to her during office hours, and I really grew from that. And in a sense, if you saw my digital paintings, it's actually because of her, because one of our units or one of our projects was, uh, I would say she's one of the pioneers of the hybrid, I can't pronounce this word, hybridization of digital painting, like digital media and analog media.
Mhm.
So that's how I started scanning in real painted objects into Photoshop and digitally manipulating them to create its own painting. So yeah, I think it has influenced my practice today and my confidence today as an artist as well.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of people have mixed feelings about art school, and like mixed experiences. Some people just like love it and
Mhm.
feel like it has like fully grown them as a person, and then there's people who just like absolutely hated it and just completely abandoned everything that they used to do.
Yeah, it's really my life is basically a big ass gray area, because when what I was going through in Canada and what subsequently led to my gap year was a lot of personal stuff, but because so everything just felt like it was mixed into one. So I mean, my school is notorious for like shitty leadership and like whatever and so on and so forth. And I did meet great people that I'm still in contact with today. Actually, I consider them like my chosen family, so to speak. Um, and like I said, I grew a lot as an artist and all that, but I also hated it only because it was something personal that I was going through at the time.
All right. So I have one last question, which is actually, I mean, we kind of discussed it already, but where do you see yourself right now? Like, do you consider yourself an emerging artist, or someone barely like scratching the surface?
It's funny you say emerging, because in
Mhm.
Toronto, um, everything in Toronto is emerging because it's a relatively new city in the sense that it's still trying to cultivate its characteristics and its own culture.
Yeah.
And so they label everything as emerging artists. Like I have a friend, it's like, you know how the overrated word in California or LA is like curated, like, oh my God, this is curated, that's curated, whatever. In Toronto, it's emerging.
Yeah.
I have a photography friend who's been in photography for like 5, 6 some odd years now. He's still labeled as emerging. Back to your question, I think I don't know. I really can't answer that because I'm going into a new territory myself.
Mhm.
So I guess you would say I'm an emerging visual communicator. I'm just trying to find my footing because I'm teaching myself at the same time all of this too.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having this conversation with me and being on my
Thank you for
podcast.
having me.
Of course, of course. Do you have anything you want to promote or anything? I know you have your own podcast. You might as well promote it because by the time this episode comes
No,
out,
because
no?
I don't know if I'm actually gonna get to editing it. So no worries. But I mean, I guess follow my Instagram. I don't know.
What's your
Support
Instagram?
artists, share your friends' work. I don't know.
What's your Instagram?
tsai.arvs.
There you go.
Tsai Arts. Which is funny because now people think Tsai is my first name. When in fact it's actually my surname. But anyway.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Well, bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much to Arvin for being on this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please make sure to like and subscribe to this channel, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.